Hello everyone, I'm Silverraptor and welcome back to a Wargame Deck Creations video where I have a special guest today. Say hello to Razzman. Hi Razzman.
Yo, what's up?
So, in this deck building process, I've been watching your Wargame videos on and off, and some of the units you use were certainly units I probably never would have picked, and I thought I'd pick your brain, so to speak, on different unit types. So, before I make a deck, which you've provided me, the Scandinavian national deck, we're going to go through your deck, kind of just analyze it, then I'll go and build mine with your feedback. How does that sound?
Yep, sounds good to me.
All right, so let's go into it. So we're going to take a look, and first thing I noticed is that you've got your infantry in helicopter. That's pretty standard.
Yeah.
I also should put a note that you are probably more of a conquest player, and I'm a little bit of a destruction player, so we might have a different play style here and there.
Yeah, maybe not so much in Scandinavia, but we'll get that when we progress into the deck.
Yeah, well, I just noticed you have 8 CVs, and in destruction, you kind of don't need that many CVs, but yeah.
I mean, it's not even that much. I think even for conquest, it's more on the lower side because very often you see people sometimes even running 3 cards of CVs depending on what they bring.
Yeah, especially a support deck that can definitely bring in 3 cards with all the amount of logistics tabs they got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, nothing really spectacular in the port up. I think I know that some players like to run both supply truck and supply helicopter.
I'm kind of one of those, but yeah, it depends upon the deck.
Personally, I'm not really a fan of supply helicopters, especially not small ones because Scandinavia doesn't get any big ones.
Yeah, the smaller ones are kind of crap.
Yeah, and in general, they are all very cost inefficient, but the smaller ones are especially cost inefficient. Like if you look at 25 point ones, for 5 points more you get like 100 less. Sure, you get the speed, but the problem is the speed isn't, depending on the situation, it's not even that helpful because you can't go as far to the front line. It's basically impossible to resupply your, let's say, 8 HGM units that are at the town right at the opposite, right at the front line, etc. So even if the unit itself is faster, most of the time your units that you want to resupply have to go further back. So you don't really gain that much speed with them.
Yeah. The only helicopter I would actually consider with the Scandinavian is the AS-332 because it's got 1,500 liters. And for helicopters, they're kind of a little tricky. I use them kind of as mini-fobs. And what I mean is that instead of sending my wheeled vehicles like the Scania that you have here all the way back to the fobs to resupply, I'll sometimes park the supply helicopters a bit back from the front lines, but not as far back, and then just land them there. And then just move the trucks to resupply at those helicopters, and then send those trucks back to the front line to quickly resupply, and then send these helicopters back to the fob to make it kind of quicker. It's a little more hop skip.
It is.
It's a little more. It's a little more work, but
I used to do that too in the past, but I felt like that for one, you not only sacrifice micro in the game, you also sacrifice activation points in the deck because you now use 2 slots on
for the same supply
vehicles.
For the same supply, yeah.
Not only that's not as big of a deal, but then I feel like once you are like at like 3 or 4 trucks, depending on how big your trucks are, if you just queue them up as soon as they're empty, you fast move them onto the fob, shift, fast move back to the front line. So there's basically some sort of chain going on. You don't really need the intermediate fob, I guess. What is what you call it? In order to do that.
The mini fob.
Yeah, the mini fob.
I guess I only do mini fob for when it's a super big helicopter. Then that just makes sense.
It also depends on map size, etc. I think it's also just mainly a playstyle thing. But keep in mind that 3 activation points, especially in a coalition, can be quite a lot.
Yeah. I noticed that you took the STRIP BV90 as your CV vehicle. I just wanted to hear your opinion between that and the next one down, the STRIP BV3021.
Yeah, well, they're basically, I guess, you could even say they're like basically 3 contenders for this type of spot. There's also the 130 points in Tyrion by the Danes. The main reason that I use the Swedish STRF90 or STR whatever, it's basically an STRF90 with dummy gun. It's mainly because of the speed compared to the other ones, like the STRV103 or the
3021.
Sorry, no. The command CV, the command tank by the Swedes.
Oh yeah, the actual tank.
Oh,
yeah.
you were comparing it to the autocannon one first.
Yeah, the autocannon. That's the one I'm comparing.
Okay, yeah, no, that has just a bad autocannon for one. It's like, I think if you ignore the KPVT, it's I think even the worst autocannon in the game. It has bad accuracy, not that great rate of fire, and bad range.
I've seen autocannons similar to this kind of stat. One thing I think of is if there's like a helicopter that flies over, autocannons stun it up a lot quicker.
That is true.
And it moves just as fast as the STR IP BB90, and it's also amphibious. Yes. So that's why I kind of like it.
Yeah. That, like, I'm not saying it's like inherently wrong. Obviously, like, I'm not saying you should do everything just as I say. It's just my opinion.
Right.
What I like is, for one, the autonomy is very nice. 300 is very, very low. So, basically on the brink of, you nearly have to resupply it if you want to get it to the front line. It should reach it fairly comfortably, but sometimes you have to move it around back and forth if we're getting artillery and such.
Yeah, a little bit.
And then there's the big issue of only one back and one top armor. Especially against artillery, because against HE rounds, 2 armor only takes 40% of the damage, whereas 1 armor takes 100% of the damage.
But
also against clusters.
Doesn't the 1 armor reduce it?
1 armor doesn't reduce it. Nope.
Oh.
1 armor, I think it might reduce from splash damage, so maybe not direct hits, but I'm not sure about that. The main difference between 1 and 0 armor is that you can only get shot at by guns or HE rounds that have the HE tag, AOE tag. For example, if you look, for example, at the STR V90 CV, if you look at the gun, it's just a normal MG, but it doesn't have the AOE tag, which means that it shouldn't be able to target 1 armor vehicles. Same with infantry guns.
Oh, so that's how it works. The AOE can target the vehicles with very low armor.
Any armor. Although, maybe vehicle-based MGs like that one can also target 1 armor. I'm not 100% certain on that, but normal infantry cannot shoot at 1 armor.
Yeah. Well, it's just that this light machine gun's kind of useless because the infantry that it uses it against, they can just cross the field of this LMG.
Actually, no, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. Infantry can shoot at it, but damage is massively reduced on infantry weapon. That's how it worked. Sorry, got a bit confused myself there.
Yeah.
The difference between 1 and 0 HE when it comes to 0 armor when it comes to HE damage is not very significant, but between 1 and 2 it is very.
Okay. Okay, so that is good to know. Alright, yes, this is why you're here. You've got a fob, that's standard. You should always have a fob. If you don't want it, you get rid of it at the start of the game. Well, let's move on to infantry.
Infantry, yeah, that's something. Scandinavia has just a buttload of good options there. It's really hard to do something wrong there because there's so many good units there.
So many good options. I see that you got the XA 186NOs, which have got the 2 front armor. They're not amphibious, but they're still the same points. I'll definitely take them. You've got your Fallschirmjäger 90s. Basically, the ultimate anti-infantry, anti-tank infantry squad, 15-man squads, Eric's missiles plus a killer LMG. Yeah, this is going to rip apart stuff.
Yeah, and one thing I'd like to add is there's basically the FSK, which are more or less the same thing, but elite. But the main difference, which is why I prefer the Fallschirmjäger, is with the 15 HP, they can just tank so many more tank shots. They're so much bigger of a threat against tanks because they're much harder to kill, especially in a town. It's like one of the few scenarios where the extra 5 HP are like definitely worth paying for compared to if they were 10 men.
Not to mention, the Eric's missiles have longer range, so they're more zone of denial.
Yeah. Eric's is just massively strong.
Oh yeah. And then Stormers, Shock Train. This is a no-brainer. Stormers definitely.
Especially with the CV90. CV90 is just definitely one of the best IVs, arguably the best, depending on what you value, but it's just ridiculously good.
It's basically just a lower armored Marauder 2. essentially.
Yes, like I think only one armor difference now ever since they changed it. But I definitely say that the Bushmaster 2 is much better of an autocannon just because it has a much higher rate of fire, making it a lot better against infantry.
Yeah, for example, the U.S. has that kind of, it's not a Bradley, but you know what I'm talking about, that vehicle tab.
The combat, yeah.
Yeah, the combat, yeah, it's kind of like that. It can take out light tanks if it gets close with that kinetic AP power.
And it basically kills every other infantry fighting vehicle that isn't like a Tau Bradley at Tau 2 range or a Marder 2 really, and it's still very, very good at supporting infantry against other infantry.
Yep. Now we go to the cheaper. You have another stack of Stormers and XA-186 NOs, and I want to know how come you just didn't get another Stormer tab with more CV90s?
Basically just to have something fast but still very affordable kind of infantry squad. If I just need a pure infantry squad, let's say for a town fight or something, or when I need to quickly reinforce something, it's cheaper than the 5K Mega 90, has basically the same anti-infantry capabilities, but just 10 points cheaper. That's really the only reason.
Oh, actually, 10 points different from the Falcon here.
Yeah, I mean, you have 5 men less, obviously, which in the long run can make a difference, but sometimes you want more guns rather than more men.
Right. And then, of course...
I mean more individual units as in 2 units with high HP is what I'm trying to say.
Right, and then, of course, you've got the Dragoneers and what I call the 5-point trucks of death, because M113, whatever abbreviation, was too long to say.
I'll just call them Gavins.
Gavins? I just call them the 5-point trucks of death because whoever's inside them is going to die.
Well, I mean, that's also an important thing. If you have a 5-point vehicle that has 2 or more front armor, that's very, very good as for a 5-pointer. And if you, on top of that, have a Browning or even more MGs, that's a very, very good 5-pointer. Because, again, the difference between 1 and 2 armor is massive. When it comes to heat weapons, you need only 10-point heat to one-shot 1 armor, but 16-point heat to one-shot 2 armor. For kinetic, you need 20 AP to one-shot 2 armor and 10 AP to one-shot 1 armor. That's why the difference between 1 and 2 armor on 5-pointers is so massive, and especially if you spam them and use them as meat shields, that the enemy needing 2 instead of 1 shots can make such a huge difference when you're using them as meat shields or something.
Yeah. And then you've got the RBS 56.
Obviously.
Yeah. When these first came out, I looked and I'm like, oh, really? They've got the same range as the tank, so no matter what they fire, they'll always be hit by the tank. But then, after I looked at it a bit more, the accuracy is only 50%, and generally I found you want 70% accuracy around for ATGMs. But they've got 26 AP power. Those can take out like BUs and such if you get a good side shot. And also, because they're 5-man squads, they can survive that stray tank shot that fires at them.
I mean, the range is obviously still a bit annoying sometimes. But it should also be noted that since they are 5 men, they only have good stealth. 2-man infantry squads have very good stealth, which certainly is a difference. Like if the enemy has a scout relatively close, you can get spotted, and once you're panicked, even if you're not dead, you're just not going to hit anything. But they're still very, very decent, and I mean...
I'm thinking kind of around, Paddy Fields, where it has that little town near the bridge in that 1-point zone sector that you're supposed to fight over.
Yeah.
Though they're very good there, because in the town, they could basically zone denial most of that entire sector.
Yeah, they're very good. Even they have the drawbacks, but they're just different, but still good.
Yeah.
It's, I guess, a way to put it.
Yeah, definitely. Now, the one thing I've definitely noticed by watching is that you generally tend to not like man-pads. Is there a reason?
I can't fit them in, really. That's the main reason. Man-pads, especially like Mistral, are very, very good. Even basic. I actually really like basic because they're so damn cheap.
The RBS 90.
I just can't fit them in. That's really the main reason. Because the other infantry slots are just so much, or the other type of infantry is just so much more valuable than this.
Yeah.
Than man-pads.
Because I was thinking, like, take out a Stormer squad, put in an RBS 90, and you still have plenty of infantry to
I mean,
do your business.
if you or anyone who's watching really likes that mod, it's obviously perfectly fine. I'm not gonna hate you for that. You know, everyone plays like they want. You know.
Yeah, because a 2,800 meter man-pad rage, that's just a godsend. You put this right next to a tank, and well, that tank is perfectly safe from any Soviet helicopters flying overhead.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Although they obviously have a bit of trouble keeping up when they're on foot, but there's still the range is certainly very nice.
Yeah. All right, support tab. I see you have the Recon. You know, the one that
basically, yes, the key unit of this deck, honestly.
Yeah, the one where everyone that you play against hates you forever.
It drains supply like nothing else. So there's a very good reason to just take one of them and upvet it, which massively increases the accuracy, but it's just such a ridiculously strong unit.
Yeah. You might as well have two just in case they get lucky and take one out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 12 rounds per minute when 14 rounds. This thing is going to set off quite a bit.
And 10 seconds aim time, which is the deal breaker here. That's so
10
massive.
seconds?
Yeah, modern, they're basically 95% of the artillery has either 10 seconds aim time or 30 seconds aim time. And 10 seconds aim time is only for the high-end ones like Beacon, AS-90, Paladin,
the expensive ones.
Soviet Mister, the expensive ones.
And I noticed the expensive ones fire only like 3 rounds and then they're done.
It is very... No, it really depends on the type of unit. It's very inconsistent, and it's something that is not at all displayed on the unit card. The AS-90 fires 3 shots with a very short time between the shots. The Paladin fires like 5 or 6 shots with more than twice the time between the individual shots. But it's obviously not displayed on the stat card. But it's in game such a massive difference.
Yeah.
It's like one of these things where Eugen is just
inconsistent with.
Yeah, it's inconsistent, or not necessarily inconsistent, but it just don't show it. You literally need to open up either the files with modding tools, or you need another program for it in order to check that, or literally do manual checks in the game. But it's just
a hassle.
Yeah, and the game not telling you that is obviously a big deal for newer players or players who just simply don't know that.
Yeah, definitely. Do you know how many rounds the Recon fires before it stops?
All 14.
All 14. Okay. Yes. So, dear grid coordinates, here, take all of my ammunition. Okay.
Yeah. But sometimes you have to be a bit careful that you're not shooting too long while you're pushing up and end up accidentally killing your own infantry or something.
Yeah. With those, I like to do the shift click where I say target this and then instantly hold down shift and right click to move. So it fires its 3 rounds, and when it's done, it will automatically move out of the way. So I don't have to worry about it.
It's gonna take a while for the Beacon to do that. Also, I think that's one of the reasons why it eats so much supplies, just simply the rate of fire, and it doesn't stop firing until it's literally empty.
Gotcha. Okay. I guess we're going into your AA. I see you have a lot of AA, which you need because you have no man pads.
That and because Scandinavia AA is very awkward is a way to put it.
Yeah. I noticed you have Noahs instead of the iHawks. Any reason why?
Well, Noah, in my opinion, is like the only hawk that is actually worth using. I mean, the Yurtzog, sure, it has no radar, but it loses 10% accuracy and a significant amount of range. And that's just, again, player specific. Personally, I just feel more comfortable in just microing the Noah with turning it off and on with Seedplane than using the Yurtzog, which is just less accurate and less effective. Mm-hmm. Both are fine, but that's preference. Other than that, I wouldn't really bother with any other hawks. Then there's obviously the Naysams. For the Naysams, shoots 6 missiles at a single target. It often doesn't even kill it. It's very inconsistent. It's very squishy. It's very easy to lose because 5 HP, no armor.
And one thing I've noticed, they fire those AMRAMs so quick that before the first AMRAM even either hits or misses the target, it's already launching the second. So if the first one does kill its target, that's a second AMRAM wasted, and you're wasting supply at that point.
Obviously that can be very, very strong against planes, basically more or less secure or guaranteeing a kill in a way. On the other hand, it's very easy to just have it dump all the missiles on like 2 helicopters that are not even armed or something.
Yeah.
It's just a hassle to use, and if it's out of ammo, you all constantly need to resupply it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I also see that you have the RBS 90, and that is definitely a
RBS
good
90
vehicle.
cheap, fast,
And it
it's not
fires
very
2
strong,
missiles.
but it's very cheap.
It fires 2 missiles before it needs to reload.
Yes, it's also a big deal that the game also doesn't tell you.
Yeah. You have to look at the kind of like the amount of barrels that are on the weapon and tell you how.
That most of the time that gives you the right idea. But when it comes to artillery, obviously you don't have multiple barrels, so unless you're the Amos. But
yeah. Let's talk about the Amos. How come you picked the NM 106 over the Amos?
The main reason I basically always, or everyone should basically always put a mortar in there, even if you have heavy artillery. Because they have a cheap way of smoking off the enemy or using it as defensively. Smoke is very, very powerful.
Yeah, and, I need to get better at that. I've been slowly using more and more
It's just
smoke.
something that you have to get used to. After a while, it's just in your system, and then the Amos, it does a lot of damage with its HE shells. But it's expensive. It doesn't come with a lot of rounds, and it eats supply like nothing else. Especially when you're already using the beacon, which is very supply intensive. There's no place for another supply intensive artillery piece.
Gotcha.
And another small tip is generally it is a lot more efficient to just buy a new mortar instead of resupplying your old mortar. For one, because it's again supply intensive, and two, it's most of the time also even more cost effective when it comes to if you were to calculate the supply into points.
Okay. So don't supply mortars. Got it.
No, I mean, if you were to use mortars, if you were to I can't talk. If you were to use your mortars offensively as like using them to kill your opponents, then it's a different thing because most of the time you want 2 or 3 or 4 shooting at the same time. But if you're using mortars mainly for smoke, then you generally don't have more than 1 or 2 on the field, so that you would not really start running out of mortars if you rebuy them instead of resupply them. But again, if you use them differently, that's a different thing. But generally, And then there's the automatic, obviously.
The automatic.
I don't think we need to really talk about that, right?
I think all your videos of your enemies cutting you out from taking out all the tanks and planes and helicopters and infantry, it's just basically it kills everything.
Yes, it's if it were in any other decent deck, it would make the decks most likely broken. It's such a good unit, but it's the only reason why it's not. That's the wrong way to put it, but it doesn't really. It's not as easy to notice how OP it is because the rest of Scandinavia is generally not that strong as other decks.
Right.
Especially the tank type.
It basically shows up to say, "Don't worry, Scandinavia. I'll make sure that you can still be picked."
Exactly.
All right, the tank tab. Now, you see you've got 2 cards of STRV 121. This is basically
literally the only heavy tank in for Scandi. So yeah.
Yeah, basically this is its way of saying it's basically the Chinese heavy tank of this deck.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, very close to it.
It's essentially the Leopard 2A4 in a nutshell.
Leopard 2A4 with modern ammunition. That's literally what it is. Yeah, and I think also better. I suppose firing control system, since I think it has the same accuracy as the Leopard 2A5. No, I think that's 5% less. Whatever. Who cares?
I think the 2A5 is 70%. A lot of the super heavies have 70%.
So,
yeah. So 2 cards of that. So you have 6 of those, and now you've got the Leopard 1A5
NO2. Yes. I think most people or many people take the SCRV 103D instead, which is a very good tank. My personal problem with the tank is the fact it has no stabilizer and no turret makes it very, very awkward to use offensively.
It's a defensive tank for sure, definitely.
Yes. And even when using it defensively, if the enemy is microing well and is not attacking directly from in front of the tank, then they can micro the tank in a way that it can shoot at you, instantly reverse either out of range or out of line of sight. That by the time the STRV 103D has turned and started aiming, it lost line of sight already and can't shoot back at you.
Gotcha.
But that's a very, very annoying thing. But if you either catch the enemy off guard or force your enemy into a situation where they can't get out of line of sight of the 1 or 3D in a close quarter engagement or something, it can F your shit up.
Yeah, it's got small size, so shells are going to miss this more than hit, or more likelihood to miss than a regular
I think
tank.
it's like minus 5% accuracy.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's like additive or I don't know, but
I'm not sure either. But still, it makes it more likely to miss, and it's got 15 rounds per minute.
yeah, that's just massive. Auto-loaded as well, so even if you're panicked, you're shooting with the same rate of fire.
Well, I would like to take a look at the STRV 103C, because this is actually a tank that I've actually used to good effect. Because, yes, it's a little worse than the 103D, but it's not that much worse. And if you actually take a look, it's amphibious with a lot of the benefits.
Yeah.
So I could take this, I could go across the river and sneak it behind the enemy on the side, and then if you could get this onto an enemy's flank and just starts opening up, good luck, enemy.
Yeah, although there's the issue that it has only poor optics.
Yeah.
So it has a big trouble spotting enemies, and especially medium optics on a tank, roughly at 70 points or obviously more expensive, is sort of a must. I feel, because generally you should, in theory, always have scouts at the front line, obviously.
But that's
there
not
are
always
situations
feasible.
where the scout doesn't have line of sight to the other tank, etc., where sometimes you can really get fucked up by not having medium op.
Yeah.
Those situations are rare, but they can happen.
Yeah, but if the enemy's out in the open, you don't need to have good optics.
Yeah, but if the enemy is like at the edge of the forest
Yeah.
shooting at you, you can't spot it. Medium optics most of the time can't spot it.
Right. Okay. So that's why you picked the Leopard 185. It's got a pretty good gun.
Yeah.
It's kind of
It's
like
just
it's more of
very
gun than tank.
Yeah, the fact that it has 12 armor instead of 13 is kind of a big deal. If you have
Yeah.
13 armor, you cannot get one shot by kinetic guns at all.
Yeah,
if you're
I know
at full
that.
HP.
That's why that's why I picked the T-72As in my Soviet decks.
Yeah, but it's still, for 70 points, a pretty decent tank.
Yeah, it will still survive most kinetic shots.
Yeah, and it has a good gun, it has decent speed, good AP, good accuracy, as practically every high-end 2-4 tank.
Yeah. All right. Yep. Let's take a look at the Recon tab then. And I notice you have a lot of infantry.
Yes, well, the Marine Jäger, I'm gonna jump right straight to them. I'm generally not someone who uses a lot of 2-man Recon squad, although I feel like also that they are undervalued. I think they are very good if you know how to use them. And the main problem in most decks is just that you can't fit them in, because many decks offer strong fighting vehicles in the Recon set. And something like shock Recon squads are just generally a lot more efficient per card because they can fight, they have higher availability, and they can spot just as well.
Yeah.
The main reason for the Marine Jäger is just really sneak them around, get them in behind the enemy lines, and then snipe stuff with the beacon. That's really the only reason I have them in there.
I watched you do that with Highway of Soul, where you were finding their fob and stuff, and then Beacon was going to town.
And something that also has to be mentioned is if you manage to get them behind enemy lines and they notice that you have something behind enemy lines, they will inevitably spend a lot of points trying to find what you have there.
Right, and they're only 25-point infantry squad.
And they're also using micro on their base where you can push or something, which can maybe force them to not watch or something. That's something that you may not really think about it the first time, but once you play around with it, but you start to notice that. Or if you're on the receiving end, you notice that. And yeah.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, I noticed that you picked the Jaeger 90s, and I was wondering why you picked that over the regular Jaegers. Because I think
well,
the regular...
in the past, I used regular Jaegers. Ever since they rebalanced the MGs, I'm not doing anymore because now the Mini-Me is better than the LMG3. It has less suppression, but the extra accuracy is definitely worth it, even though it has also a bit less range. And obviously the 875 meter, the extra range on the Calco stuff is very, very nice as well. The extra AP doesn't really matter most of the time since you don't want to fight heavy tanks, but the range is certainly very, very nice.
Yeah. Yeah. It's to each your own. I definitely will want to pick the Jaeger.
Yeah, and if you're spending like 55 or 60 points on a unit that you're buying like 1 at the start, maybe 2, and at a maximum 5 throughout the game, not a huge difference.
Yeah, but one thing I do want to ask is why you have them coming in the links when you don't have any other infantry coming in helicopters and instead of the empty Jupiter.
The only reason is really just to have something in a helicopter in case I need it. Sometimes I want to. It's a team deck. Like if my teammate is opening up with an AA helo, then which Scandinavia obviously very bad at helicopter openings and stuff, then I can't just send it in. Or if I just need it fast, like really really fast somewhere, it's just to have the flexibility mainly.
Gotcha. And then you've got the regular Falkman Jaegers,
which are probably like sorry to cut you off there, but the shock Recon infantry is probably, in my opinion, the best Recon infantry you can get. It has still good availability, it can still fight for itself, it is still fast, it has 10 HP other than regular infantry, and it can, again, spot just as well, still is very good stealth, and is generally very cheap.
Yeah, definitely, especially since you got this in 5-point trucks.
Yeah, one thing to note about this 5-point truck, it's the only 5-point truck that has this kind of off-road speed. Every other 5-point truck has 50. I think. Is it 50? Yeah,
I think it's 50.
Wow. That is actually a massive difference.
100 kilometers an hour. Wow.
There's no real reason why, but it's such a huge difference because even if you're like fast moving and you're saying, well, most of the time I'm driving on the road, there's still always parts where you're not, and that actually makes a big difference.
Yeah, definitely. Now, let's move on to the Scout Defenders. I see you use this a lot, and I didn't quite understand why you'd pick it. 14 rocket pod's not going to kill really anything, and it's got 4 strength, so it's going to die in any kind of one-hit AA. Yeah. But then I started seeing that you were using this more of a suicidal piece to see what the enemy has.
Yes, exactly. At the start of the game, it's fast. Well, it's relatively fast. Very small means means that it accelerates quickly. Mm-hmm. It's really just put it on the flank, use it at the start, just to at the start obviously know where the enemy is pushing. You don't need to spot what he has there really, but know where the units or where the big bunch of units are driving. In 1v1s especially, they're cheap. You can put them on the flanks to see if helicopters are flying around, because the difference against helicopters when it comes to spotting between good, very good, and exceptional optics are basically negligible unless the helicopter has stealth. And for the most part, helicopters aren't really that efficient at actually scouting units that are like in cover or something, because ground optics, like especially infantry, can get so much closer anyways, and helicopters are very easy to spot, very easy to kill. So unless it's like a longbow, a tiger, or something of those sorts, I generally don't think it's worth buying. Getting an expensive scout helicopter.
Okay. Maybe a suggestion. If you're going to use these more as like sacrificial pieces or just really cheap, quick helicopter scouts, why not get these as hardened? Because hardened also increases their optic chance of seeing something, so you might have a better chance of identifying or some such.
But yeah, it's only identification, so not actually spotting. Second of all, it's one of those things where 99% of the time it's not gonna make a difference if they're trained or hardened, and then in the 1% of the time they're either gonna suddenly kill a CV because they have that extra bit of accuracy or spot something, identify something, or maybe that 1% is where I'm actually running out of those for whatever reason that I can't imagine right now. There's no really again. It's probably mostly irrelevant, but that's a good point.
Yeah, so, I mean, just something to think about throwing in.
I mean, it's always, you should always think about whether you want to upgrade something or not. On certain units, it's a big deal, on others, it's less.
Right.
Yeah. The rule of thumb is, again, with a few exceptions, is if you're running out of the units, downvet it.
Yeah.
If you're not, try upvetting it and then see how it goes.
Right. Finally, you've got Wildcats. And this is certainly an interesting kind of scout. I assume this is going to be a frontline unit with its good optics, autocannon. It just goes alongside your other...
Basically everywhere. It's good at frontline, it's good at base defense, it's good at flank defense. Mm-hmm. It has one of the better autocannons. Obviously, it's not Bushmaster 2 tier, but when it comes like the autocannons, so you don't really pay premium for. If you know what I mean, then it's one of the better ones. It has normal range, it has normal AP, but good rate of fire, decent accuracy. It's good at killing infantry, good enough against vehicles, even against helicopters. It's pretty decent. Most of the time, like cheap autocannons are better base defense against helicopter spams than actual AA.
Sometimes, yeah.
It's very good.
If I could just ask your opinion, what's between that and the M8 Panzerbill? Which one would you say?
A Wildcat.
Wildcat.
Although the Panzerbill obviously has a speed, so they're not necessarily very comparable. The Wildcat, main difference between Wildcat is it's much better against other vehicles, basically at killing anything, mostly helicopters. The Panzerbill is mostly useless at defending your base or something against other helicopters. Panzerbill obviously has the speed and price advantage.
And if you spam a bunch of these, those cannons can add up killing infantry.
They can, but at the same time, Wildcats can also very good kill infantry, and they have more range on the gun. They're not necessarily very comparable. They fill somewhat different roles.
Yeah.
I think both are fine. It's just a preference thing.
Right. Okay. Vehicles. I see you got basically the Wildcat.
It's basically it's literally the Wildcat without optics and without stealth.
Yeah, basically land-based ATGMs are just useless because
I wouldn't really say that. I think
they're
not just,
useless. They're just
most of the time they're too expensive. Although the Laro Tau 2, sorry to cut you off, is one of the few Jeeps that I actually think is worth it.
Yeah, so I think so too.
It's probably a better idea to take it instead of the PNMK. I think the PNMK is most in there because I also use it in my 1v1 deck, because for 5 points cheaper it's against helicopter spam just as good because you don't need the optics. So it's probably I'm literally just replacing it in my own deck right now.
Right.
With the Laro Tau 2.
Yeah, the Laro Tau 2, the only problem with land-based ATGMs is usually the tanks they're firing have such long range on their guns that if the enemy decides to do a full tank charge, your ATGM vehicles will only have a chance to fire one missile.
Yeah.
And whether that missile hits or misses, they have to immediately back up or they're going to die once the tank gets in range of them.
Yeah, most of the time that's what happens. Or if the enemy spots them before you actually use them aggressively or something, they can easily die to mortars. They're very niche, but there are certainly situations where they can be useful. Like if you're in the middle of a tank engagement with your own heavy tanks and you have your Laro Tau 2s behind it, and the enemy is most likely busy dealing with your actual tanks, whereas the Tau 2s can just fire them.
Though there is a rare exceptions where if your front heavy tank armor is so heavy and they have lighter tanks that are moving forward, they'll shoot whatever they can, and since they can't penetrate the front armor, they'll move to the next thing, which happens to be your ATGMs behind them. I've seen that happen before.
Yes, that can happen every now and then, but if that's the case, then most of the time the enemy tank is so easy to kill that they may not even get that far.
Maybe, yeah, but unless they have a lot of them.
True.
Another vehicle of note is the IKV 105. It's just a very cheap, just kind of shoot 'em bang dead gun.
Very cheap,
amphibious too.
It's probably a good substitute for a tank. If you're using the 103D in your tank type, it's probably a good substitute to have some sort of tank that also has a turret and decent AP.
Yeah. Okay.
Also, I find that it looks fancy, but that's just beside.
Yeah. It's got skirts on the side of it.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
This is a decent unit.
And then you've got the Fennec Toad 2. Very nice choice. Definitely good.
It's one of the better Tau 2 helicopters.
Yep. Can survive.
It has 6 HP. It is fast.
Can survive a lot of Red 4 AA missiles that are 4 or 5 HE strengths.
Yeah.
For one shot at least. Makes them use at least another missile. Make them work for their kill.
Yeah, defending 20mm is like one of these autocannon helicopters that the main problem with them is they have no turret on the gun.
Yeah, I've noticed that they're not.
Which is why they need a lot of time to align their gun. But it's also once they have aligned their guns, the the damage output is massive.
Yeah, but the thing is that because it takes so long to align the guns, that if they're firing at the targets and they kill the target really quickly, it's spending more time trying to fire the gun than it is to actually fire it.
It is niche. It is very niche. Most of the time you don't have the points to put it in, but and it can be very, very nice in certain situations.
Yeah, I think the TOW 2 is definitely the better choice. Okay, aircraft. So you've got the F-16A MLU.
Not really too surprising, I think.
No, not at all. It's a pretty good ATGM plane. Definitely. I need to remember some other stuff. You have Block 16As, and I'm kind of curious about that. I used to go back with the Yak 141s, and I just kind of found that planes that only have 2 short range and 2 long range missiles aren't generally too lethal, if that makes sense. Because
okay, I know what you mean.
Yeah, because they could run out of all 4 missiles, and if the enemy's still up, whoops. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, the main thing with the Yak 141 and the F-16A and very similar many other planes is around that price area, is they can come out and 2 on veteran or 2 on elite, which is massive. The F-16AM or the Gripen can only come at hardened, and one thing to note is that the accuracy gain from veterancy becomes bigger and bigger the higher you gain, the higher you go to veterancy. So what I mean is the accuracy increase from rookie to trained is much lower than the accuracy increase from veteran to elite. You know what I mean?
Oh, so because of so because the stats add on to
So it's not just like from an absolute point value, elite gets more than trained accuracy, obviously, but the higher you get, the more you get also with each additional step. That's why the difference between elite and veteran in terms of accuracy boost is actually fairly significant, but the difference between hardened and veteran is even bigger, and so on. Which is why the F-16AM, for example, which only comes at 2 at hardened, has a significantly lower accuracy, especially on the short range missiles, but even on the long range missiles, if I'm not wrong.
I think don't forget the 16AM starts at a base 60% accuracy, and then you're adding in
but I think the Danish F-16A Block 15, if I'm not wrong, still has higher accuracy on the long range missiles because it comes at elite. But another very, very important point is both the F-16AM and the Gripen, which are the only, not necessarily high end, but mid end or something ASFs they get, the missiles have 4 and 5 HE respectively. Meaning that if one of each hits, the enemy plane is still alive. Whereas the F-16A Block 15 has 5 HE on both. And
6 HP.
6 HE, sorry. But it's basically the same thing as 5 and 5.
Right.
Since even if the 6 HE one crits, it only deals 9 damage, so it's not a big deal. Anyways, but that is a very big deal that you or people generally should watch out for. 4 and 5 HE is sort of the worst you can get in that area. I mean, in theory, it can get worse, but there's also 4 and 6 HE, like on the Tornado F2, which is still okay, but obviously, ideally, you want at least 5 on both.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I see that.
I'm not saying it's definitely the best option, because the F-16AM and the Gripen still have fire and forget on the long range missiles, which is very, very nice to have.
Yeah.
But for 30 points less, the F-16A is basically more or less just as efficient.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So,
and it's cheaper as well.
And I think like the Yak 141 doesn't go up to elite as well. Plus, it's also 20 points more.
It's on veteran, but the Yak 141 has find forget and not some active, and the Yak 141 has 60% base accuracy on both.
Okay. All right, so I see why you picked this. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Block 5, and I really don't have to say why you got the Block 5. It's just like, no, I don't like any vehicles in this area.
I'm actually surprised, because I think a lot of people underestimate cluster bombers.
Oh no, there's a lot of cluster bombers that I know that you need to get. Block 5 is definitely one. There are some cluster bombings that have 8 AP power that you definitely need to get. Yeah, definitely.
One thing that I don't like at all is the Recon, though, the cluster Recon, because problem with that is it has only 4 cluster bombs, so it covers not a lot of area. Like, sure, if you catch out a tank with it in the middle of it, it's dead.
Yeah.
But it's so much easier to avoid. Where with a Block 5, you like the thing is with the Recon.
Yeah, I definitely get.
To put it into perspective, also for others that are watching, the Recon is sort of like 80%. Like to simplify it very, very much, it's like 80% chance to deal no damage or 90% chance to deal no damage, 10% chance to kill the tank. Whereas the block is like 100% to deal like 2 to 5 damage or something. Science, because of the huge area of effect. Obviously, you still need to roughly know where the tank is, where it's moving and such. But block 5 is most like guaranteed bit of damage, but it begins like a tiny chance of kill.
Right, and if you do the math, the Vegan total amount of AP that's dropped is 40, whereas the block 5 is like 70 if you count the number of bombs.
Yes, that is true, but you have to keep in mind that.
No, I'm just pointing it to another prospect.
Yeah. But with the Vegan against most tanks, 3 bombs, like the higher you get with AP, the more damage you obviously do. So I think the actual damage output is probably a lot closer than the total AP output, if you know what I mean.
Right. Fighting Falcons. I'm surprised you didn't get a couple of these things.
Yes, they're very good. The main thing is I had the Fighting Falcon in before instead of the Puff. Puff obviously only seed plane. The main problem with the Puff in 1v1, it's a plane that is very good simply because it's cheap for multi-role, which makes it a very good and is a very good anti-helo plane, which is very, very useful to have in 1v1s. But it has no stealth and is relatively slow. No stealth means that it gets significantly earlier spotted than most other seedplanes, which have medium stealth, except for the Raven, which has good stealth.
Right.
Which is why I tend to not use seedplanes very often that have no stealth in team games. Because if the enemy is decent at microing their radar AA, they end up not doing a whole lot. They still basically force the enemy to have their AA turned off for a while, which is they still have an effect even if they get spotted. But it's still not nearly as useful, which is why you can still obviously use the Fighting Falcon. The Fighting Falcon is a really, really good bomber, but the other reason I don't have it in is because it sort of fills the same role as the Beacon.
Oh, the Beacon replaces the Fighting Falcon.
Sort of, yeah. It does so much damage, and it's such a high rate of fire that the Fighting Falcon isn't necessarily needed, really.
Right. That's actually pretty funny.
It's obviously still not exactly the same, especially if the enemy is like just pushing down a road with a shit ton of stuff. Then the Beacon, unless you see it early enough coming or something, is not gonna do the same type of damage. But against stationary targets, when you're pushing it down or something, it's more or less the same thing.
All right. And you didn't put anything in the Navy tab.
No, I don't even bother with that.
I always put fill up the Navy tag with a general, just kind of standardized set, just so that just in case I end up in a map with seed, I have something I can bring in if I need to.
I genuinely don't remember the last time I played mixed deck, either by accident or on purpose.
You generally avoid the maps that have a seed.
I avoid it, and well, most of the time when I'm looking for games, I don't want to play against like any kind of noobs or something, and I just don't play a lot of public games as well in recent times, which is probably a big part of that.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, you can definitely control that. Okay, well, that was your deck. Let's go and quickly build mine. This is going to be a longer video, but hey, we got a lot of good insight into this.
Yeah, it tends to be significantly longer as soon as you have at least one more guy in there.
Just gotta name it and put in where's Scandinavia. There it is. Just a regular old deck. All right. So with your insight in mind, I definitely want to put a fob. I saw that you put the Norwegian fob. Is that it?
It does. Yeah, I think. I don't know. Not like it actually matters.
I know it doesn't matter, but it's just like
I think some fobs have either no flag or some bugged flags on the actual model. I think.
No, they all have a flag on the model.
Yeah, no, but there's like a certain. Maybe it's not a Scandinavian fob, but there's like 1 or 2 fobs in game which models have some bugged or wrong flags, if I'm not wrong. But I don't remember which ones. Not like it matters again.
Right. Yep. So I think for the vehicle, I'm going to take the STRIP BV 3021. I just like the autocannon of how it can just kind of defend itself against vehicles and helicopters a little bit. Even though it's, like you said, a bad autocannon, it still works out. And
yeah, it's a significant step up from a normal MG.
Yeah, definitely. Now for infantry, I'm kind of weird. I actually look at the machine guns that the infantry are using, and I pick the best infantry for that. And let's see.
Danish ones, Danish or Norwegian. I think they should have the same MG.
Yeah, they do. They're the same stats. I've actually
and same primary weapon.
Okay, you're gonna like this. You know those 5-man recon squads that the Soviets have?
The Rosetka, yeah.
Yeah, they've once one of those recon squads managed to find my infantry CV in a public game, and my infantry CV managed to kill them all without taking a single loss.
Yeah, the fun fact, the East German CV is actually shock. They have shock training.
Oh, really? I didn't pay that much close attention. I have to go back and check that.
Yeah, that's also something very interesting. Although personally, I prefer to first look at the transport, especially on Red Foresight, where you often have the access to MS-17s, A-29s, which I really like to take. Just you have one at the start and if you managed well, you can resupply it several times. It can be very nice to have.
Yeah. I would bring in the tank CV, but I have different plans for that, and like you said, I mean, it's kind of good to try to defend itself if you know which way the enemy's coming, but a lot of times enemies like to flank CV, so it's not.
And for the most part, tank CVs are mainly useful for the armor, right? And because they don't die to artillery as easily, right? And the S tier IB
has kind of low
Jesus
armor.
Christ, has still a decent amount of armor, at least front and side, so it's not gonna die as quickly. Most things.
So I'm definitely going to copy you. I'm going to bring in a CV. I'm actually going to bring in the Commando class in the Bell 412 helicopter instead of the Lynx because it's 5 points cheaper.
It's also slower though, significantly slower.
Oh, yeah, true.
I mean, you're paying 120 points versus 125 points.
Yeah.
It's a 5-point difference in such a big price area. But the 80 kilometers per hour can certainly, in Conquest, give you a couple of extra points. In Destruction, give you a bit more extra income, like 3, 4, 5 points more over the course of the game. And in theory, it could also potentially survive an incoming helicopter or a plane at the start or something.
That is a good point. Yeah. All right, and then of course Scanias for the supply truck.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good. Slightly little different from you. I liked your Fulchman Jaeger 90s, those are definitely a must. And in the XA 186 NOs, because of the front armor. Not to mention it's the same availability for the regular XA 180s. And I mean, yes, they are amphibious, but really, you should get the 186 NOs. Let's see, you picked, I'm trying to remember what you picked. I think you picked the Dragoners?
I picked the Stormer in the CV90 and in the XA, and then the Dragoners in the 5-pointer.
Yeah, I'm trying to look where the Oh, they're at the top.
They're completely on the top, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I'm comparing them between the Gewehrmen, and they're pretty much the same.
They're the same. The Gewehrmen just have access to different transports.
Yeah, the Dragoner has that 2 front armor that you were talking about.
The Gewehrmen get access to the 10-point and M135 though, which has a decent autocannon.
Yeah.
For just 10 points, which is also worth mentioning.
Yeah.
That's quite a beast, that thing.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. You get 23 there, or you can get 18 with the Gewehrmen. So I definitely need Stormers. Stormers are beastly.
Yeah, they're very, very nice.
Yep. You got them in the basically the cheaper Martyr 2 thing.
Yep.
So that is actually pretty good, and I definitely want to get man pads in here. If I wasn't going to go with man pads, I would definitely get the Gewehrmen with the NM135, so I have a bit more autocannon.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm actually going to copy your Dragoneers with the 2 front, 2 sides. It's actually a pretty good idea. I'm going to get the 23 trains. So now I have I feel plenty of infantry to cover my role that I need. Then I'm also going to get those RBS 90s because, I mean, come on. This is a 2,800 meter range AA piece from an infantry squad. You don't get 2,800 meters AA range from an infantry squad.
Yeah, it's literally the only one.
Yeah, I'm going to get them in the STRF 9040s because, I mean, those things are good too. And then I'm also going to get the RBS 56s because, for the reasons we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
You got them trained as well?
No, I think I have them upgraded.
You upgraded them to hardened.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense because they are pretty expensive. Yeah.
They're expensive and you have a good availability on them.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So with support, I'm of course Recon. I think when we play the game, we're going to be Recon buddies, just lobbing lots of shells at the enemy, make them really hate us. I'm just going to go with the EOTS Hawks because when I do this, I think that with the automatic being the only one I have to focus on the radar AA, and it's a conscious one because the automatic can shoot at so many things that you're remembering to turn it on and off repeatedly.
Yeah, and it's basically also near your tanks at the front line most of the time.
Right.
So it's in your line of sight, etc.
Yeah, so I'm taking the automatic, and I'm going to get the iHawks just because they are anti-plane that are non-radar. And that's the thing. So the Seed is not going to help them at all. They're just going to have to pray that these missiles don't shoot them down. I mean, yes, they have slightly less accuracy, but still, they've got a good chance of one-shotting planes.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Automatic, where are you? You need to go into the deck. Good sir, there you are. All right, automatics are in. RBS 90. I generally don't like to have basically 5 strengths vehicles, but the fact that the RBS 90 has 2,800 meters on there.
It's also very, very cheap.
Yeah, it's very cheap. Oftentimes when I see like the Avenger, where it has infantry manpad AA pieces on it, the range is just too short so that the helicopters at their max range can take it out without too much difficulty, I found. But for this can engage them from...
Yeah, also it's the only wheeled AA you can actually get, unless you want the NASAMs or the other...
Yeah, the
NM45 or whatever the thing is.
Yeah, the NM45, I don't know, it's more of a suppressor than a killer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I want to kill them.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah, alright, so... the mortars, I understand what your idea for the smoke. I'm just going to get the Amoses, because, I mean, how many artillery can you get with 2 rounds? Once I get better with the actual smoking, and I think I can do that with the Amos because they're 2 rounds at a time, can smoke larger areas. I think I might go down to do your mortars when I later visit this deck.
Well, one thing I didn't mention is that actually the bigger your shell is, the bigger the actual smoke cloud is as well.
Yeah,
so low HE
definitely.
mortars make less mortar smoke clouds, and actual heavy artillery makes big smoke clouds.
Yeah, so the Amos will definitely smoke out an area. So concentrate one area pretty well. I've noticed with yours and your mortars, you spread out your smoke quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So to the tanks. Of course, we are going to get the 2 cards of STRV 121s because why wouldn't you? One thing I do actually kind of like, instead of the Leopard 185 NOs, I actually kind of like the STRV 105. Because
it's a very nice tank.
It's cheaper too, and it's basically a good sniper tank, I feel, compared to the Leopard one.
It is. It is how the lower. It's not as good as like supporting against other infantry, but it's for 15 points less. It's a very good again, or good enough against other tanks for sure.
Right. I'm going to get the STRV 103Cs for the reason I said before. The fact that they're amphibious, I can get them from the side, and I can still put up a wall in case the enemy tries to charge at me. I can hold them off with these pretty well, because if they don't need to move their turret, they are just deadly. And then I will get the STRV 105s hardened. I'm going to forgo anything in the vehicle tab to sacrifice for that, but yeah, I feel like this is a good complementary of tanks.
Works well.
Yep, for the Recon, I'm going to try your Scout Defender. I'll bring it in as hardened, but I want to try it. You seem to use it a lot. It's kind of suicidal. We could definitely throw one down each of our side of the map to see where the enemy is and know what to do. The Fallschirm Jaeger that you got, that was pretty good. And you said you got him in the TGB 13 because of its unique speed. I'm going to copy that idea. For the Jaegers, I feel like because I don't have anything to really back up the Jaegers with them and the Lynx, I don't feel that moving them about to spot. I mean, I have the Scout Defender if I want to move them to spot an area really quickly. So I think I'm actually just going to get the regular Jaegers and the MD Jupiter, just so that they're also cheaper as well. And the Marine Jaegers, one thing, well, okay, the Marine Jaegers don't have the AP power like some of the two-man squads do, but I think
I mean, they're not meant for killing melee, right?
Right. Oh no, the NM116 kind of useless.
The M41A1 for 10 points, I should mention, is actually not that terrible. The main problem with it is the autonomy. And the fact that you only get 14 of them for 10 points, so you run out very quickly. But it's actually not that terrible of a unit.
If I was going to get the one M41A1, I would just get the Panzerbills, which I'm probably actually going to do. And then, I'll get the Marine Jaegers in their NOs as well. I like to organize it as well. And, okay, so I've got full Recon squad like you. Vehicles, the only one I would consider is the IKV 105, but I'm swapping that out for the tank STRV 105, so move on from no vehicles there. Quickly throw in the TOW-2s, emergency helicopter ATGMs. Should I get them? I think I'll get them hardened. I don't think I go through them.
I also have them hardened. You don't really need 9 of them.
Yeah, you don't run out of these generally. If you are, then you need to double check your experience of where AA is.
Yeah, or you're already in such a bad position that...
yeah, it's kind of hopeless at that point. Okay, so I'm trying to think. With the F-16 MLU, I feel like because we have the ATGM infantry squad, which is really good, and I've got the TOW-2s in the other squad, and I've got pretty good tanks, I don't really need these as much. I mean, I understand their usage of getting further into the back line to take out super heavy tanks, but if you're going that far back for a 160-point plane to take out like a 170-point BU or something that gets taken out by the AA, you're kind of even in the points game.
Yeah, I mean, generally you want to take out the enemy tanks while they are engaging yours, which generally means they are relatively close to yours, not as far back near the AA, which is most of the time not moving up as much as the tanks are. And so that's 40% ECM, and if you're with your teammate or you are sending a seaplane with it, you can more or less ensure its survivability. So that has to be kept in mind. And which is a very nice thing is, since the if you're using like me the F-16A Block 15, which is not necessarily most high-end ASF, you still have the long-range Jet missiles against planes, meaning it can be used as second-line ASF as well if you already bought it for like a tank or something and it's still there. So it's certainly nice to have, even if you
Right. I'll come back to that. Definitely going to be getting some Block 5s because dear small area, I do not want any vehicles to live. Thank you. Oh yeah, that's another thing. The Block 5 can kind of also double up, I feel, for the M16's role in just killing tanks and such.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think I'll actually forgo.
In the open, it's a bit harder because in forests or something, the vehicles move slower. So in the open, it's easier to avoid. Although generally, if they're in the open, there's a good chance that they are currently engaging your tanks. So if you have the cluster out, either they're standing still engaging your tank and they get clustered, or they're moving to the side, in which case they'll get sideshot by your tanks.
Right, definitely. So I think I'll just use the Block 5 as basically the F-16 MOU substitute. This also opens up my ability to get the Fighting Falcons because, well, in case the Pecan doesn't kill it, the Fighting Falcon will.
Yeah, even against tanks, it still does a significant amount of damage.
Yeah, 1,000 kilogram bombs, nothing to sneeze at all. And then finally Puffs, because you don't get, there's not too much availability on seed. Some nations don't even have seed in their deck. So especially with the number of planes I'm getting, and like you said, if you're going after a tank and you have a puffed flying behind it, which is actually slower than any of the F-16s, it will definitely be able to shoot the seed planes at a safer distance than the F-16s.
Yep.
All right, and then I'll just quickly do the Navy tab. One thing I do with the Navy is I just throw in all seed planes. I've got the Tram Intruders. I throw in the Tomcats, the Super Hornets, the F-111Gs, and finally the Etendards down at the bottom. And I organize them from roll to fastest to slowest. So Tomcats are on the farthest left, and Super Hornets, and the F-111G is slightly slower. The Tram Intruder is slower than them, and then the Etendard at the end, all trained. And basically, I just do that really quick, and then I've got every single Navy tab for Blue Fort figured out ever before, unless I actually are constantly trying to change my Blue Fort deck to be ship conscious. So I just do that.
Well, I mean, it's basically what Naval was. Blue Fort just spams planes, Red Fort spams ships.
Yeah, that's definitely because Blue Fort has generally better planes, the Red Fort has generally better ships. Alright, so that is my Scandinavian deck, and we looked at yours. So I think this is a good time to cut it here. We've definitely been talking quite a bit, and I think it's time to play a game. Does that sound like fun? Alright, well, thank you for coming on with me, and I hope to see you in the next video.
Yep.
Bye.
See ya, guys.